Hi, welcome everybody. I'm Dr. Patti Ashley here in Boulder, Colorado, and doing this Fear to Love to Grace Summit, and excited to introduce our guest today, Kim Murdock. She's an author, an editor, and a coach, and who's made it her mission to help people deal with the loss of a loved one, particularly a spouse. And the book we're going to be talking about today is Feeling Left Behind, Permission to Grieve. So welcome, Kim. I'm so happy you can be here with us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you and I have walked this path of grief together, both losing our partners, and I already feel like I'm going to cry just saying that out loud. And you've been such a wonderful support person. And in the empathy, I think, with grief, empathy is the key. And sometimes to feel empathy, we have to feel with the other. And none of us like to feel grief, right?
I wouldn't choose it as my feeling of choice.
Right. And yet, in our culture, it's so hard to know what to do with all the feelings that come up. And that's what I love so much about your book, because you give people permission to feel whatever they're feeling whenever they're feeling. So can you tell us a little bit about that, the giving people your experience of wanting to give people permission to grieve?
Well, for me, I just felt like in so much of my grief journey, I felt like so much of society was trying to say, in our culture and our friends and family, and we're trying to say it's not okay to grieve and that we have to hurry up through this process. We have to be okay. I think in general, our culture really celebrates people who are really resilient. And I don't consider myself not resilient by the fact that I grieve, but we just have this weird definition to say, you have to hurry through this. I was just talking to somebody today whose spouse died in September, and people are already asking her if she's dating. Like, somehow you can get through the grieving process in 2 months. And I feel like we just don't allow people to grieve. And it frustrates me, and it's not fair. So I wanted to write the book to tell people, you're done. You've lost your spouse, you've lost your partner, you've lost the person close to you, and it hurts, and it's okay to grieve, and you should grieve, and it's natural to grieve. Mm-hmm. I got really lucky because I had my sister-in-law she had lost her spouse 5 years before me. And she, every time I would say, well, this is how I feel, she'd say, yeah, I felt that way too. And so I knew I wasn't crazy. I knew I wasn't alone. I knew that what I was feeling was natural. Mm-hmm. I also had an amazing grief counselor who, when I would say things, would say, yep, that's normal. That's how pretty much all the widows and widowers that I work with, that's how they feel. And so I felt like those two people really gave me the grief, and I wanted to do that for other people. And when I was tossing around ideas for this book title, one of my friends, her husband passed away 6 months before mine did. And I texted her that title, and she said, it immediately made me cry. And she said, I wish I had given myself permission to grieve, because she hadn't given herself that. So she wished she had just seen that at some point and allowed herself.
Yeah, that's beautiful, because I completely understand that. When my dad died when I was 11, I didn't know how to grieve, and it felt like people just wanted me to get over it and go back to school and be normal, and I couldn't understand what was going on. So when I lost my partner, then almost 50 years later, I thought, I want to do this different, but how do I do it? I mean, grief is hard to it's a hard path to walk. So I was really open to the feelings that were coming up. And what a lot that came up for me was shame around the fact that I really need to talk about it, and I don't know who to talk to. And that's why I started writing my book, because I wanted to I wanted to remember the stories. And I also could notice in my process of wanting to hurry up and get over it. And so whenever I would call you, I'd say, tell me and let me cry. And you were so amazing, and such a dear, to help me get through, dear heart to get through that. Because people don't get it, and you get it. And I really, really appreciate that about you, and that you wrote this book to give people permission to grieve. It's a perfect, perfect subtitle.
Well, grief is hard enough. And if you add shame on that, then that's just a whole nother level of feelings that aren't necessary. So I just think that's so wrong. I just feel like we should be allowed to grieve and we shouldn't add shame on top of that. I mean,
Yeah.
we loved our partners.
Yeah.
So how would we not feel awful? How would we not grieve? And to have people judge us for that just really frustrates me.
Right, right. And you understand because you went through this experience of feeling like no one gets this, right? And I understand that. Because that's why, I appreciated you. Like, you get this, you get this. So, and also people talk about time, like they want to put time on it, right? It's like, how long is it going to take? Well, it's, we live in such a logical world, that we want to figure out how long it's going to take. What do you say to people who want to know how long is it going to take?
I think that's different for every person. I mean, I think some people can maybe get through the grief a little bit faster. And I don't think we ever get through the grief. I mean, I think 20 years later, somebody could say something that's going to make you cry. So the grief still is in there somewhere. You just don't live with it every single day. It's not raw every single day. So I think for the rawness to go away depends on the person.
Mm-hmm.
It may depend on how the person died. I mean, I think if it's an abrupt death, maybe a little, you don't have time to say goodbye. You don't have time to sort of prepare. And not that I think when it's a long illness, you can really prepare, because I thought I was prepared. And I wasn't in any way, shape, or form. But I think just depending on the person, maybe depending on the circumstances, it's going to take a different amount of time. Mm-hmm. And I remember feeling at the year mark really, really anxious because I thought I was supposed to be okay. Like our society says, you get a year.
Yeah.
And after a year, you're okay. And I wasn't okay. Yeah. And I was really anxious coming up on a year for two reasons. One, because I thought, wait, I've lived a year without him. How is that possible? Mm-hmm. And two, I was really anxious because I thought I'm not okay and I'm supposed to be okay now. Mm-hmm. And I know, like, one of my friends, her son was, I think, 13, I believe, when her spouse died. And at the year mark, she said she was really hesitant to tell any of his coaches or his teachers that it had been a year, because she was worried that they would no longer treat him with kid gloves. And he still needed treating with kid gloves, even after a year. So I think there's a long-winded answer to your question. In terms of time, I don't know that it ever ends. You just lose the rawness of it. Mm-hmm. And I think it depends on the person.
Right.
And what else is going on with their lives. I think a lot of it depends on your background, too. I'm not a psychologist, but my observation is that for some of us who have had a little bit more abandonment issues as we were younger, maybe the grief is slightly harder. Yeah. Because it just brings that back up again.
Right. There's all those different layers. Sure. Yeah. I had a professor in college say that all depression was unresolved grief. And was almost 20 years after my father had died. And that's what started me down the path of therapy. And I still don't understand that word resolve, unresolved. I mean, I don't really like the word. How do we really resolve grief? I mean, is there a better word? What happens with grief? I was so convinced when Lawrence died, I was going to grieve well, right? It's going to not fester the unresolved grief. And it's been 3 years. It was 3 years this week since Lawrence passed away, which is, talk about time, hard to believe. And yeah, I mean, it gets better, but it's always there, right?
It's always there.
So I don't know. Was there a better word than resolve?
Well, I'm thinking maybe unfaced or ignored grief, maybe.
Yeah. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, because I don't think resolve.
Yeah, I know. Have I resolved my grief? I don't know. I think I've walked a path of grief and paid attention to it, which is different from when my dad died, because I was always paying attention to it, but I was just told to kind of get over it. Move on, be happy he's in heaven, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting. Yeah. So what do you hope your readers take away from your book? You've shared a little bit about that with us, but your hope is what? I know.
Well, I think when you lose your spouse, it is the most lonely. And when I say spouse, I'm talking about partners. I'm talking about, I'm just using that as the catch-all phrase. But
Mhm.
I think it is the most lonely experience. And even if you've got family and you've got friends, there's something about it that makes you feel alone. So what I hope that readers get from my book is that they aren't entirely alone, that they might not know me, but I'm there, I'm sitting with them
Yeah.
in their grief with them.
Yeah.
I'm listening to them, even though I'm not in that room, so
Yeah.
that they don't feel so alone, so that they can read what I wrote. And I'm very honest in my book. And so it's very, I try to be as honest as possible, even when it makes me look bad, even when it makes me look like I'm not very feeling. I try to be very honest. So I want people to see that and go, oh, I felt that way too, but I didn't want to admit it. It's hard to admit sometimes the way we feel. So I want people to know they're not alone. I want people to know they're not crazy, that these are the emotions that you feel. And I want people to know that they're allowed to grieve. And it'll take whatever it takes.
Yeah, I think, when you were there for me, that's one thing you said was it's different when you lose a partner. There's something really different. And I think that's true. And I don't think I know anyone else really close in my life who's lost a partner. You were really the only one. And to know that you had that kind of empathy meant so much, because it is different. I've had a lot of loss in my life, been divorced, and lost friends and been on many journeys of grief, but this one was rough. It was really, really hard. So and I love that in your book, because my work as a therapist is I always say give people a place to talk about things nobody wants to talk about, because I felt like it was odd growing up and nobody wanted to talk about something really horrific had happened. And so I learned through the years of like some of the old parenting beliefs that say, stop crying before I give you something to cry about, and you should be ashamed of yourself, and don't be angry. And those are things that I learned in my work as I was becoming a parent educator and a therapist, from the old parenting pedagogies that are still in our cellular memory. And so I think a lot of not being able to express our feelings is because we have this unconscious belief that these feelings are bad. So when I read that in your book, and you just went all out into, this is what I'm feeling, this is what I'm feeling, this is what I'm feeling. And I thought, yay for Kim, because it's such a great model for people to say, oh, wow, she can really be vulnerable and she can share these, that's the grief. That's the, what was it you said? Not unresolved, but
Ignored or unfaced.
yeah, that's not ignoring the reality of grief.
Yeah.
And you do that so well in your book and all the stories that you tell.
Thank you.
Such a beautiful.
Well, one of my friends, I went for a walk with her, and it was, I'm going to say 9 months. Her husband died 10 days after my husband died. And we were walking, and I shared something. I don't even remember what I shared, but it was not flattering. It was however I was feeling. And she said, that's why I love you, with you, because you're tell the truth that all of us feel, but we don't want to admit. And so I was lucky. I was raised in a house where I was allowed to express emotions. So I don't have that. I don't have some of that negative baggage around that. And so by doing that, I'm more comfortable with it, and hope to allow people to be more comfortable.
Can you say that again? Because you were kind of breaking up a little bit, and I don't want people to miss that, because I hear there's some profound words in that.
No.
Friend said.
I just said that so I don't know how, I'll just start again, but I said when I was walking with a friend, and it was about 9 months after our husbands had passed away, and I shared something, and I don't remember what that was. but she said, this is why I like hanging out with you, because you say what we're all feeling, but we don't want to admit.
Okay, yeah, you're breaking up a little bit then too. That was weird. You said this is why I hang out with you. Is that what you said? Because you admit that you say things that we don't want to say out loud. Is that
we're all feeling, but we don't want to admit?
Yeah.
And so I wanted to put all those feelings in my book, because I know I'm not the only one who feels this way. I know I'm not.
Yeah.
And so but we don't want to, but we have shame around admitting it. So, and I did too. I mean, I was a little embarrassed by some of the feelings that I had, but that's why I put them in the book, because I wanted other people to know this is normal.
Yeah. Yeah. And you met Lawrence in a grief group as well, right? Because he had lost his wife of 20 years prior to him and I moving into relationship. So you had met him that way, correct?
Well, I knew Lawrence for years. Lawrence, as you know, was great at bringing people together to do marketing and networking. So I had gone to a few of his networking meetings. I also had a family member who worked with him at the Freedom Center. So I had known Lawrence for a long time. And I had done, the church had done a couples retreat probably 20 years ago, maybe even more. And I had been a speaker at that. And he and his wife were in that audience when I spoke.
Was that on the 5 love languages?
It was on the 5 love languages.
About that.
Yeah. So we, so he had been in my audience at that point. For a long time, I had a newsletter. He got my newsletters. Then my family members started meeting with him or working with him for recovery. And then I'd gone to networking meetings, but then I hadn't talked to him in years. And then we ended up sitting next to each other. Coincidentally,
right?
We were in a group together at a grief group. So, sorry, the cat just jumped up.
I know animals love you, especially little kitties. That's so perfect. Yeah. He told me about that from the 5 love languages, that you had done that. And were you with Reg at the time when you did?
Yes, Reg wasn't with me when I spoke, but I was with him.
So the two of you were schooled in the 5 love languages, right?
We were.
Yeah.
And we had different love languages.
What were they? Can you share?
Well, we both had quality time as the main one. But then I had words of affirmation. And Reg was awful at that. And he had acts of service, and I was awful at that.
Yeah.
So we had to really work on that. Actually, I wouldn't say we had to work on it. We had to be aware of that. So if one of us got frustrated with the other one, we had to remember it's because we just couldn't comprehend that was important.
Yeah. That's funny. Lawrence and I were the same. His was service, and I was terrible at that. And he loved to do things for me. And mine was affirmations and quality time too. Very similar. And he was terrible at affirmations too. He could say, I love you until the cows come home, but just to acknowledge something else was tricky.
So he actually had conversation about this, and it was helpful to me because he was telling me about an instance. This was before he met you, but he was telling me about an instance where he could not come up with a compliment to save his life. And he said, and I knew she wanted a compliment, or she wanted words of affirmation. And he said, he said, nothing even popped in my head. And I thought, how's that possible? All you have to do is just how is this even possible, Lawrence?
That's so funny. Yeah. So quality time, I imagine, both of us, that being a love language and being without our partners makes it, not that it isn't already tough, but just adds more layers, and also I think more depth too, because for me, it's really where is he still in my heart? Because I guess I have to have that. I can't feel it comforts me to know that something about the memory and his essence is still with me, right? I think he's kind of behind the summit here. I mean, he was working on Fear to Love to Grace as a curriculum before he died to bring that more into his addiction treatment program. And so, that, I guess I'm still having quality time with him, which, really sounds ridiculous, but I guess it's all I got. So,
Yeah, no, it is. It's all you got.
yeah. So he was trying to move from fear. Well, what he learned when Susan died was something he said. It was a heart opening that he had never experienced before. He had felt his heart was like broken open into something. And that's where he came up with the fear to love to grace. So, all the fears that we have in our lives, that lead us into when we face those and we're able to love. And then when we lose our partner, grace is what's left. So how would you define grace?
Well, maybe grace is walking through the path and not fighting it and just saying, well, this is what it is and I have to walk through this. And rather than screaming and yelling, going through, maybe. I think for Lawrence, grace was a peace, a serenity. I don't know. I never talked to Lawrence about it, but I would imagine for him it was grace and serenity, peace, maybe. For him. For me, there's not been any. What I'm always looking for is peace. Like I lost my spouse. Now I'm just looking for peace. I don't know if those are synonymous, grace and peace for me or not, but maybe grace and grief, maybe that just means walking through it.
Yeah. It's an interesting word because it can be loaded in different religions and different people's experiences of what it is. So in doing the summit, I thought it would be interesting to see different people's experiences of that because it was so important to Lawrence. It was so profound. He would call it getting out of the heart space. The head space and going into the heart.
Interesting. Yeah, for me, grace, when I think of grace, I think of ballerinas and being, so I think of it more in terms of graceful, which I am not graceful, sadly.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Words are funny things, aren't they? It's hard, even like with grief, it's hard to put language to how we grieve and what that means, right?
Yeah. Well, even, so one of the things that I was telling people is when you don't know what to say to somebody who's lost somebody, I think saying I'm sorry is a good place to start. But I was literally talking to somebody this morning who was saying that other people get really upset when you say I'm sorry. And and that's so hard for me to understand because to me, sorry means empathy. It means I'm sorry for your loss. For other people, sorry means I caused it. So then they get mad about that word for some reason. So I think with grief and words, it's so easy to get upset because we do have different meanings for it. I appreciated when people said I'm sorry, but I've also heard that that's not a good thing to say. So
yeah, everybody has a different perception. So yeah, you're right. Language is a tricky thing. So what other things do you think are helpful to say to people when they're in grief?
I think just knowing that you're not alone. I think just knowing that the feeling, you can't help it. You can't squash them down. You can try, but they're there. You can ignore them, but sometimes that comes out in physical problems. I think just saying it is what it is and just be okay with where you're at in your grieving process, even if everybody else judges you, even if, and that could be the other way too, right? Some people, my mom has a friend who, her spouse died in his mid-90s. He had become a lot of work for her. And so I wouldn't say she was glad when he died, but she wasn't sad. And her family members were very upset about that because they felt like she should grieve, like she should be more sad, she should cry more. So they were judging her for grieving too fast, whereas other people get judged for grieving too slowly. And, we all have our own path. and just walk your path, whatever that is. It might be super fast, it might be slow, it might be somewhere in between, but we all have the way we have to get through this.
Mm-hmm.
None of us want to do it. We're all going to do it at some point, and just be okay with where you're at.
And don't try and fix it for the other person.
Oh, I mean, I can talk all in all about if you're the.
I know. I got so much of that. Here, try some rescue remedy. Here, try this. Oh, go do this to feel better. I'm like, I don't want to feel better.
Yeah.
I have to resolve this grief this time. I got to do it right. Let me do that.
I have a chapter in my book called "Heal is a Stupid Word." I hate that word. Oh, you've healed, or you're healing.
Yeah.
No, I'm not. I'm living with it. I'm
Yeah.
not healing. There's nothing wrong with me.
Yeah.
Or, oh, I'm glad to see you're better.
Yeah.
That one drives me nuts too. Nothing wrong with me.
I know, you're better. You get that. Yeah, that just hits me hard too. Oh, you're doing so much better.
Yeah.
Like, you didn't like me before when I was in my grief, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Or, I'm so glad to see you laugh. Oh, that always made me mad. I want to go, I'm not laughing. I laughed days after he died. Sometimes things are funny, even when you're in the middle of grief, but it felt to me like people were judging, like, oh,
Yeah.
you're laughing.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah. So I think what I wanted people to say is, wow, that's really hard. Wow. I know how much you loved him. Now I'm going to cry. And the thing that I needed the most was to tell the stories, just to talk about him. And that makes people uncomfortable too, which was, again, another reason you were such a gift in my life, because, we could talk about Lawrence and you would let me go on and on and on. And it just felt good because it helps us, I think, so much in our grief. And it oftentimes makes people really uncomfortable. Ooh, we don't, you want to, like, we don't bring it up because we don't want to remind you, like, we're going to forget.
Right. Like, we're not perfectly aware of the fact that they're gone. Yeah. I mean, that sits with us all day long, every day. Yeah. We might be doing something else, but we know that they're gone.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have a chapter in my book called Reg is My Favorite Topic. And in there, I talk about how I just love to talk about him. And I say at the end of it, if it's uncomfortable for you to talk about your loved one, because sometimes for some people it's too painful. I have a friend who lost her son. She cannot talk about him because it's just too painful. So I get that. But if you're somebody who wants to talk about your loved one, then what I say at the end of that chapter is do it. Even if other people get uncomfortable, it is your right to talk about them. That's what I believe anyway.
That's great advice. And finding a group, I didn't do a group. I just called you. But and wrote my book, that's why I wrote my stories, because I just had to talk. I had to do that. Well, I think your book is amazing. I think you're doing a great service to many, many people by giving them permission to grieve and writing all about your journey. And I really appreciate your time today to talk with me about it. Is there anything else you want to share before we wrap up our conversation?
I don't think so. I mean, the first part of the chapter or the book, the subtitle is Permission to Grieve, but the main title is Feeling Left Behind. And I titled that because I think that's what we often feel, right? Like, we're left here, they've left us behind. And not everybody feels that way, but I know for me, that's really how I felt, was that I was being left behind. And one time Reg and I were coming back from chemo and things were not going well. He was in tremendous amounts of pain. And he knew, I've always had this thing about being left behind. I've never liked it. And we were coming back and he started crying and he said, I know the worst thing I could ever do to you is leave you behind.
Oh, I don't remember you telling me that story.
Yeah. So that's why I had to title the book. I had to have that in there because that's exactly how I felt. I felt like you left me behind, and that was so painful for me.
Yeah, it is so painful, isn't it? It's like, why? We don't know why. We don't know why. We can't ask why, but of course we do, right?
We do.
Yeah. Why?
The first thing we ask.
Yeah. Lawrence used to say that he wanted me to die first because he didn't want me to have to go through the grief that he went through when he lost his wife. How, what, oh, okay.
Sweet though, isn't that?
What's that?
That's so sweet.
It was so sweet. Yeah. And I said, no, because I don't want you to have to do it twice. And that's why a lot of couples, they die like real close to one another, right? People have been together like 50, 60, 70 years. They die within days, sometimes.
So there's actually something called the widowhood effect. And I don't remember the exact statistics. I have it in my book, but you are statistically much more likely to die within the first 6 months after your spouse dies. But one research actually shows that when your partner dies, for up to 10 years afterwards, you're much more likely than someone else your age to die, because it's got that big of an effect on us.
And to get sick. My mom got cancer like within 2 years of losing her mother. I remember that.
Yeah.
I think our immune system is weakened when we're in grief. All the more reason why we have to pay attention to it so it doesn't go into other places in our body. Yeah.
My friend she got diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis not long after her spouse died. And when she goes on there's a forum, I guess, for that. And a lot of the people on there have had a death within a short period. I can't remember exactly what she told me, but within a short period of time.
Yeah.
Of a loved one dying. A friend's mom got rheumatoid arthritis a year after her son died.
Yeah.
So
interesting.
It does some nasty stuff to the body.
Yeah. That inflammation in the body, I guess, to me, I would make up that's holding on instead of, allowing the energy of the grief to move. But anyway. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
And,
thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're so welcome. I just think your book is so important, and you've been such a sweet support to me. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.